In a world where love, lust, and loneliness collide with crime, some women have turned seduction into a weapon and trust into a trap. From New York, Date Bandit, a 25-year-old who prowled dating apps to drug men and strip them of their wealth, to Tabitha Bundrick, the so-called Fentanyl Femme Fatale, accused of luring victims with promises of sex and drugs only to leave them dead. These stories expose the dark underbelly of modern relationships. They're not just tales of theft and murder, but warnings about the dangers hiding behind a smile, a swipe, and a late-night drink. Picture this: it's a Friday night in New York City. The skyline glows, rooftop bars are buzzing, and for one young professional it feels like the perfect time for a date. He met her on a popular dating app just a few days ago. Her profile was sleek, stylish photos, a captivating smile, and a bio that struck the right balance of mystery and charm. They messaged back and forth. She was quick with her replies, flirty and engaging. He felt lucky to have her attention. So when she suggested grabbing drinks at a high-end lounge in Manhattan, he didn't hesitate. They met, sparks seemed to fly, and the night unfolded like any other promising first date. Cocktails, laughter, music in the background. She insisted on ordering the next round, and he thought nothing of it. But the last thing he remembered was raising his glass. Hours later, he woke up in his apartment, his head pounding, body heavy, and memory blank. His watch, a luxury piece worth tens of thousands, was gone. His wallet emptied, and the woman vanished. This wasn't an isolated case. Authorities say this was the work of a 25-year-old woman who had perfected a chilling cycle: target, drug, rob, disappear. And shockingly, this was her second arrest in just a few months. Her story has shaken New York, not just because of the boldness of her crimes, but because it highlights something much darker: how quickly trust can turn into betrayal in the digital age of dating. Prosecutors call her a predator of opportunity. Her hunting ground wasn't dark alleys or nightclubs, it was the swipe-driven world of dating apps. Her victims, men with good jobs, expensive tastes, and reputations to protect. They were bankers, tech entrepreneurs, executives, the kind of men who didn't expect to become victims. Investigators pieced together a strikingly consistent pattern. She created profiles that were both enticing and believable, nothing too glamorous to raise suspicion, but polished enough to stand out. She struck up conversations, moving quickly to arrange in-person meetups. Once on the date, she charmed her targets, making them feel at ease. She often ordered the drinks herself or offered to treat them to a cocktail. That's when prosecutors say she slipped sedatives, opioids, or sleeping pills into the glasses. Within an hour, her date would be too disoriented to resist, or completely unconscious. That's when she struck, fleeing with watches, wallets, cash, and sometimes phones to delay police reports. One man reported losing a Rolex worth nearly $40,000. Another discovered that thousands of dollars in cash had disappeared from his wallet. Each story was eerily similar: wake up groggy, confused, and broke. But what stunned investigators wasn't just her method, it was her persistence. After her first arrest earlier this year, she was released under supervised conditions. Prosecutors warned she was a risk to re-offend, and yet within weeks, she allegedly targeted another victim using the same playbook. It was almost as if she believed she could outsmart the system, or that the system wasn't strong enough to stop her. Defense attorneys argue that the case against her is built largely on circumstantial evidence and victim testimony. But prosecutors remain firm. The pattern, the similarities, and the sheer brazenness point to a repeat offender who saw wealthy men as walking ATMs. And there's another layer here. Many victims, embarrassed by the circumstances, delayed reporting the crimes. Imagine explaining to police that you were drugged and robbed by someone you invited home from a dating app. That hesitation gave her more time to keep striking. In New York, crimes like this are sometimes dismissed as petty theft compared to violent assaults. But make no mistake, authorities say her actions were calculated, predatory, and dangerous. This case isn't just about one woman with a taste for expensive watches. It's part of a much broader trend reshaping urban crime. The FBI recently reported a 20% increase in female-led romance scams in major cities. Traditionally, these schemes involved long-distance online manipulation, fake profiles asking for wire transfers, cryptocurrency, or emergency cash. But what we're seeing now is an evolution. Quick, high-risk, high-reward encounters where women use sedatives or coercion to rob men in person. It flips the script on the stereotype of who the predator is and how the crime is committed. Her arrest also highlights ongoing debates about New York's bail reform laws. Critics argue that releasing repeat offenders too quickly creates revolving doors for crime. Supporters say the laws prevent overcrowding in jails and protect low-income defendants from unfair pretrial detention. But when a 25-year-old woman can allegedly drug and rob multiple victims within weeks of her release, the system's balance between fairness and public safety is called into question. For the men involved, the trauma isn't just financial. Waking up drugged and vulnerable leaves a lingering psychological scar. And because these crimes fall into an awkward grey area, part theft, part drugging, part sexual assault, some victims struggle to even categorize their experience. This case forces us to ask hard questions. How safe is online dating when one swipe can lead to a dangerous setup? Are people too trusting when they meet someone new? And how can technology companies better protect users without intruding on privacy? The bad date bandit may be behind bars again, for now, but her story isn't over. Prosecutors are building their case, victims are slowly coming forward, and New Yorkers are left wondering how many more bad dates might still be out there, waiting to happen. Because if one young woman could orchestrate a string of robberies under the bright lights of Manhattan, how many others are learning from her playbook? This isn't just a story of crime, it's a warning, a reminder that in the age of swipes and instant matches, not everyone is who they seem. So here's the question: is she just one reckless thief or the face of a new wave of predators exploiting modern romance? It begins in the heart of Manhattan's nightlife, where music pounds through crowded bars and neon lights blur the line between excitement and danger. Men step into the city looking for connection, companionship, maybe even adventure. For three men, that search ended in death. At the center of their stories is a woman prosecutors now call a predator, 38-year-old Tabitha Bundrick. Authorities say Bundrick wasn't looking for romance. She was hunting. With promises of sex and drugs, she lured men into her orbit, made them comfortable, and then slipped them fentanyl-laced substances. One by one, her victims overdosed. When they were incapacitated or already dead, she stripped them of valuables, cash, credit cards, luxury items, before disappearing back into the city. Three men would never wake up again. A fourth barely survived, his testimony now forming the backbone of the case against her. Bundrick, standing in a Manhattan courtroom, pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of murder, but prosecutors describe her spree as chillingly deliberate, a pattern of predation that transformed a drug epidemic into a tool for personal gain. What makes this story so unsettling isn't just the loss of life. It's the way Bundrick's alleged crimes echo one of history's most enduring archetypes, the femme fatale. In noir films, the femme fatale was mysterious, seductive, dangerous, a woman who pulled men into webs of betrayal. But in Bundrick's case, the trope takes on a modern, devastating twist. She's accused of wielding not a pistol or poison lipstick, but fentanyl, the deadliest drug of our generation. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. A few grains can stop a heart. Across the United States, it has driven overdose deaths to record highs, claiming more than 70,000 lives last year alone. Most of those deaths are accidental, the result of tainted street drugs. But prosecutors say Bundrick used fentanyl intentionally, strategically as a weapon. That's what makes her case different. That's what makes it terrifying. Investigators believe Bundrick scouted her victims in the very places where loneliness and temptation intertwine: bars, clubs, and online spaces. She offered not only her company but also the thrill of drugs, packaging danger as desire. Once the trap was sprung, men were too dazed to fight back. In at least 3 cases, they never stood a chance. The alleged thefts weren't just opportunistic. They were cold, calculated robberies staged over the bodies of the dead. One detail prosecutors stress is Bundrick's criminal history. She wasn't new to this world. At the time of the alleged murders, she was already facing robbery charges in New York. That means the justice system had seen her before, flagged her as a threat, but she was still free, still walking the city streets when the overdoses occurred. For critics of bail reform, this case is gasoline on the fire. Proof, they say, that dangerous offenders are being released too quickly, with tragic consequences. But beneath the legal debates lies a deeper cultural question. What drives someone like Tabitha Bundrick? Was this a story of greed, or was it also a story of addiction, desperation, and survival? The overlap between women, drugs, and crime is growing. Women now make up about 12.5% of federal sentences, and the majority of those cases are tied to drugs. Some are caught in trafficking networks. Some are addicts who cross lines of legality to feed a habit. And some, like Bundrick, stand accused of turning the drug crisis into predation. The victims' names haven't been widely publicized, a reflection of the shame and sensitivity that often shrouds cases like this. Imagine being a family member, learning your brother or father didn't just overdose, but was allegedly set up, drugged, and robbed by someone he trusted in his final hours. Imagine being the one survivor, waking up from a haze of near death to realize you had been bait in a deadly game. That man's testimony is key. Without him, Bundrick's alleged spree might have looked like a series of tragic but unrelated overdoses. Instead, it became a murder case. Bundrick's story has sparked comparisons to one of America's most infamous female killers, Aileen Wuornos. Wuornos, a sex worker in Florida, murdered 7 men in 1989 and 1990, claiming she acted in self-defense against violent clients. She became the ultimate real-life femme fatale, a broken woman who used men's desires against them, leaving bodies in her wake. But there's a stark difference between Wuornos and Bundrick. Wuornos' crimes were tied to violence and rage. Bundrick, prosecutors say, are tied to chemistry and calculation. Where Wuornos pulled the trigger, Bundrick allegedly reached for fentanyl, a substance that kills faster and quieter than any bullet. In some ways, Bundrick's alleged spree feels like a reflection of the opioid era itself, chaotic, hidden, and lethal. Unlike serial killers of the past, who left physical violence in their wake, Bundrick allegedly left the kind of devastation that could be mistaken for accidents. Overdoses are so common now that 3 men dying in similar ways might not have raised alarms, if not for the survivor who lived to speak. This raises another haunting thought. How many other cases might be out there, masked by the statistics of the opioid crisis? How many overdoses are really murders in disguise? Prosecutors describe Bundrick as cunning, moving through the city's nightlife with purpose, adapting to her surroundings and exploiting weaknesses. But others who have looked into her background say she also battled demons of her own. Addiction, poverty, a record of past arrests, all signs that she may have been living on the edge long before fentanyl became her alleged weapon of choice. Was she a mastermind predator, or a desperate woman caught in the undertow of the very drugs she used on others? The answer may lie in the trial ahead. What is clear is the effect on the victims and their families. They are left to reconcile how ordinary nights that began with drinks, flirtation, or promises of intimacy, ended in death. They are left to wonder how much of what happened was preventable, and they are left to question a system that released Bundrick when red flags were already waving. The Bundrick case forces us to face uncomfortable truths. It forces us to look at how loneliness makes people vulnerable. It forces us to confront how the fentanyl epidemic isn't just a health crisis, it's a crime wave, giving predators new tools and new opportunities. And it forces us to reconsider the role of women in crime. For decades, the image of the femme fatale was fictional, a symbol of male anxiety in stories and films. Today, in Bundrick, prosecutors say we see that archetype made flesh, armed not with lipstick and manipulation, but with a synthetic opioid that has reshaped the country's death toll. Tabitha Bundrick has pleaded not guilty. She insists she is not the killer prosecutors paint her to be. Her defense team argues that the case relies heavily on circumstantial evidence, on assumptions built atop a drug crisis too vast to fully trace. They will likely suggest the victims overdosed on their own, that Bundrick is being scapegoated because she was nearby, because she has a record, because the city needs someone to blame. In the courtroom, the truth will be contested. But outside the courtroom, the symbolism is undeniable. The Bundrick case is a story about power and vulnerability, about how quickly desire can turn deadly in a city that never sleeps. It is a story about how drugs reshape not just the lives of addicts, but the tactics of predators. And it is a story that leaves us with questions more chilling than answers. As the trial moves forward, the world will watch. Will Bundrick be remembered as a manipulator who weaponized fentanyl, or as another casualty of the same crisis that claimed her alleged victims? Was she predator, victim, or both? What we know is this: 3 men are dead. A 4th carries the memory of what it means to look death in the face and survive. And at the center of it all is a woman accused of turning the opioid epidemic into her personal arsenal. In the end, the question lingers like smoke over the city skyline. Is Tabitha Bundrick an outlier, a singular femme fatale in an age of synthetic drugs? Or is she the first sign of a darker trend, one where fentanyl becomes not just a cause of death, but a weapon wielded by those who know exactly how easy it is to kill with just a trace? Only the trial and time will tell.